What happens when one of the biggest movie stars in the world sits down at a live daytime talk show table and the conversation takes a turn nobody in the studio expects? Make sure to subscribe to Final Take Files and like and comment for more talk show coverage. So the segment starts the way these things usually do. The music fades, the crowd is clapping, and the camera pans across the table. Whoopi Goldberg is front and center, calm as always. The co-hosts are smiling. Dwayne Johnson walks out to huge applause. He's in a fitted navy suit, relaxed, waving to the audience, shaking a couple of hands on the way to the table. Whoopi leans in first. "Well, look at you," she says with that half-smile. "You always make an entrance." Dwayne laughs. "I try not to trip on the way out. That's really my only goal." The audience laughs. It's light, easy. They talk about his new movie for a minute. He jokes about his early wrestling days, about waking up at 4 a.m., about his cheat meals. One of the co-hosts asks about his daughters. It's friendly. Whoopi nods along, listening but waiting. Then she shifts it. "So let me ask you something," Whoopi says, folding her hands on the table. "You've built this brand around hard work, discipline, personal responsibility. But you've also spoken about people needing to toughen up. Some folks hear that and think you're dismissing real struggles." The audience makes that soft "oh" sound. It's not hostile yet, but it's the first sign the temperature might change. Dwayne nods slowly. "Sure. I've heard that." Whoopi doesn't smile now. "Because not everybody starts where you started, Dwayne. Not everybody gets the same opportunities. And sometimes when celebrities say, 'just work harder,' it feels a little disconnected." There's a light clap from a few audience members. The co-host to Whoopi's left jumps in gently. "I think what she's saying is, there are systemic issues, right?" Dwayne keeps his composure. He leans forward slightly, elbows near the table but not on it. "I get that. And I never say, 'just work harder,' like it's that simple. I talk about accountability. For me, that's what changed my life." Whoopi tilts her head. "But accountability doesn't erase barriers." "And barriers don't erase accountability," he replies, still calm. The audience reacts again, a mix of applause and murmurs. Whoopi lifts a hand. "See, this is where I push back. Because when we talk about barriers, racism, poverty, education gaps, those aren't excuses. Those are realities." Dwayne nods. "I agree. But," she continues, leaning in a bit, "when someone sitting at home hears a billionaire movie star say, 'no excuses,' it can sound like you're minimizing what they're facing." There's a pause. The cameras catch Dwayne thinking. He doesn't rush. "I would never minimize that," he says carefully. "I grew up watching my mom cry over eviction notices. I've been broke. I've had $7 in my pocket." Whoopi responds quickly. "But you also had a football scholarship. You had a physical gift. That's not everyone's story." There's a sharper reaction from the crowd. Some claps. Some murmurs. Dwayne's smile tightens just a little. "Are we saying that because I worked for something, it doesn't count because I'm big?" Whoopi shrugs slightly. "No one said it doesn't count." "But that's what it sounds like," he says, still measured but firmer now. "It sounds like you're saying my message can't apply because I made it." The co-host on the far end jumps in. "I don't think that's what she's saying." Whoopi interrupts. "No, let him finish." The audience quiets. Dwayne nods appreciatively. "Thank you. What I'm saying is this. Yes, there are systemic issues. Yes, some people have it harder. I'm not blind to that. But if we keep telling people that the system is the only reason they can't succeed, we take away their power." A louder reaction now. Some applause, some scattered boos. Whoopi's eyebrows go up slightly. Nobody here is saying the system is the only reason. "But sometimes," he says, "the conversation leans that way. And I worry about that. Especially for young people." Whoopi exhales. "You worry about it. I live it." That lands heavy. The audience reacts audibly. She continues, "When you're a black woman in America, you don't get to separate accountability from the system. It's intertwined." Dwayne doesn't flinch. "And as a black and Samoan man, Neither do I. There's a louder reaction, applause mixed with tension. One of the co-hosts tries to soften it. I think what's powerful here is that you both have different perspectives on the same issue. Whoopi nods but keeps her eyes on Dwayne. Perspective is one thing. Influence is another. When you speak, millions listen. That carries responsibility. And I take that seriously, Dwayne says. Which is why I tell people the truth. The truth is, yes, fight the system when it's broken. But also fight for yourself. Whoopi leans back slightly. That sounds good on a motivational poster. The audience gasps lightly. It's subtle, but it's there. Dwayne's expression shifts. He doesn't smile this time. You think that's what I'm doing? Selling posters. I think sometimes, Whoopi says evenly, celebrities simplify complex problems into slogans. There's tension now. The easy laughter from the start is gone. Dwayne looks at her directly. With respect, Whoopi, I don't live in slogans. I live in reality. And my reality is, nobody saved me. I had help, yes. But I had to show up. Whoopi replies quickly, and many people show up every day and still don't get the same outcome. The audience claps at that. And that's unfair, Dwayne says. But unfair doesn't mean impossible. A co-host jumps in, sensing the energy rising. Okay, let's take a breath. But Whoopi shakes her head slightly. No, this is important. Because words matter. Dwayne nods. They do. Which is why I'm careful with mine. There's a beat of silence. The cameras catch both of them holding eye contact. The audience is quiet now, waiting. Whoopi finally says, so let me ask you directly. Do you believe everyone can succeed if they just work hard enough? Dwayne pauses. This is the moment. I believe, he says slowly, that everyone deserves to believe they can. And I'm not going to take that belief away by telling them the system is too big to overcome. The audience erupts, some clapping loudly, others shaking their heads. Whoopi's expression is controlled, but there's fire there now. Hope is important, she says. But so is honesty. And I'm being honest, he replies. The tension is no longer subtle. It's right there on the table. One co-host tries to lighten it. Well, we didn't expect to solve America before the commercial break. A small laugh from the crowd, but it's strained. Whoopi looks at Dwayne again. We're not trying to solve it. We're trying to have a real conversation. And I'm here for that, he says. But I won't apologize for telling people they have power. The applause this time is louder. Some audience members stand briefly before sitting back down. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. No one asked you to apologize. Feels like it, he says quietly. And that's where the energy fully shifts. Not shouting, not chaos, but two strong personalities who aren't backing down, live on television, with millions watching and the audience holding its breath as the segment heads toward a commercial break that suddenly can't come fast enough. We're back from commercial, and you can feel it before anyone even speaks. The applause is there, but it's not the same light, breezy applause from earlier. It's tight. Curious. People know something just happened. Whoopi adjusts her glasses and gives a quick half-smile toward the camera. We're back with Dwayne Johnson, she says. And we're having what I think is a necessary conversation. Dwayne nods, hands clasped loosely in front of him. He's composed, but the easy grin from the first segment hasn't fully returned. One of the co-hosts jumps in quickly. Before the break, we were talking about accountability versus systemic barriers. And clearly this is something people feel strongly about. A ripple of applause. Whoopi turns slightly toward Dwayne again. Let me clarify something, she says. Because I don't want this to turn into something it's not. No one here is saying people shouldn't take responsibility for their lives. Dwayne nods. I appreciate that. But, she continues, when you say things like, nobody saved me, that's powerful. It's also not the whole story. Because none of us get anywhere alone. The audience claps at that. Dwayne waits a beat. You're right, he says. I had mentors. I had coaches. I had family. But what I mean when I say nobody saved me is, nobody carried me. I had to do the work. Whoopi leans in. And what about the people who are doing the work and still drowning? There's that soft from the crowd. Dwayne doesn't hesitate this time. Then we need to ask why they're drowning. And we need to fix what's broken. I'm not against that. But I'm also not going to tell someone to sit and wait for the world to get fair before they try. One co-host nods slowly. Another looks unsure. Whoopi's tone sharpens just slightly. But who's telling them to sit and wait? Dwayne exhales through his nose, not annoyed, but firm. When the message becomes, the system is stacked, so what's the point? That's dangerous. Whoopi responds quickly. Nobody here said, what's the point? What we're saying is don't ignore the stack. The audience claps louder at that phrasing. Dwayne gives a small smile. I'm not ignoring it. I'm saying climb it anyway. A mix of cheers and scattered groans. Whoopi lets out a short laugh, not amused, but incredulous. Climb it anyway, she repeats. You make it sound like it's a ladder. And sometimes it is, he shoots back. Sometimes it's ugly and crooked and unfair. But I've seen too many people climb. She raises an eyebrow. And I've seen too many pushed off. That line hits. The audience reacts strongly, applause, a few people saying, that's right. Dwayne's jaw tightens just a bit. And when they get pushed off, do we tell them they can never get back up? No, Whoopi says. We tell them they shouldn't have been pushed in the first place. And while we're fighting that, he replies, leaning forward slightly, we also tell them they're stronger than the push. There's real tension now. Not yelling, but conviction. The co-host on the end tries to mediate. Can I ask something? She says. Dwayne, do you think sometimes your message resonates more with people who already feel empowered? Dwayne considers it. Maybe. But I get messages every day from people who say, I was at rock bottom, and hearing you talk about discipline got me through. I can't ignore that. Whoopi responds, and I'm not dismissing that impact. I'm questioning the framing. Fair, he says. Then let's talk about framing. The audience quiets again. When I say accountability, Dwayne continues, I'm not saying ignore racism. I'm not saying ignore poverty. I'm saying control what you can control. Your effort. Your mindset. Your choices. Whoopi nods slowly but doesn't back off. Mindset doesn't pay rent. No, he says evenly. But it helps you figure out how to. A louder reaction now, half applause, half disagreement. Whoopi's voice stays calm, but it's firmer. That sounds good. But it can also sound like if someone fails, it's their fault. Dwayne immediately shakes his head. Failure happens. I've failed publicly. The difference is what you do next. And what if what you do next still doesn't work? She presses. Then you try again. There's a pause. The audience feels the repetition. Whoopi leans back slightly. That's where people get frustrated. Because, try again, doesn't always come with resources. Or safety nets. And that's why, Dwayne says, we need better policies. Better leadership. Better systems. But we also need individuals who don't give up. She studies him for a second. You're very confident in that. I have to be, he replies. Because if I lose that belief, what am I telling my daughters? The mention of his daughters softens the room for a split second. Whoopi nods. I respect that. Truly. But I also have to speak for the people who feel unseen by that message. And I respect that, he says. But sometimes, and I'm going to be honest here, sometimes this show leans so hard into what's broken that it forgets to highlight what's possible. The audience reacts instantly. A louder murmur. Some clapping. Some sharp, oh. One co-host's eyes widen slightly. Okay. Whoopi turns fully toward him now. You think we forget what's possible? I think, he says carefully but directly, that when every solution starts with, the system is broken, people at home can feel powerless. Whoopi doesn't smile. And when every solution starts with, just push harder, people can feel blamed. Silence. Real silence. Dwayne nods once. That's not my intention. I know, she says. But intention and impact are different. He pauses. Then maybe the real issue isn't accountability versus the system. Maybe it's how we talk about both without making people feel small. The audience claps at that. It's the first time the applause feels somewhat unified. Whoopi considers that. That's fair. But then she adds, just don't underestimate how heavy that system is. And don't underestimate how strong people can be, he responds. They hold eye contact again. Not hostile, but unyielding. The co-host quickly jumps in. All right, we have to take another break, but when we come back, we're going to lighten things up a little. A few people laugh nervously. Whoopi gives a small nod toward Dwayne. We're not done. He smiles faintly. I didn't think we were. The music swells, and the camera pulls back slightly as the audience continues reacting. Some clapping for Whoopi, some for Dwayne, and some just sitting there, clearly processing what they just watched unfold live on daytime television. They come back from the break, and the energy is different again. Not explosive, but focused. The audience claps, a little louder this time, like they know they're witnessing something real. Whoopi looks into the camera. All right. We're still here with Dwayne Johnson. And clearly this struck a nerve. A few people in the crowd say, yeah, and clap. Dwayne nods, sitting upright. I'm good with nerves being struck, he says. That's how conversations move. One of the co-hosts smiles nervously. Well, let's move carefully. Light laughter. Whoopi turns back to him. Let me ask you something personal, she says. Do you think your level of success changes how people hear you? He doesn't hesitate. Of course it does. And does that concern you? She asks. It makes me more careful, he replies. But it doesn't make me quieter. The audience reacts to that, a mix of applause and murmurs. Whoopi nods slowly. See, that's the part that's tricky. Because when someone with power talks about grit, it can land differently than when someone without power says it. Dwayne leans in slightly. But should I pretend I don't believe in grit? No, she says. But you could acknowledge more openly that grit alone doesn't level the field. He exhales. I have acknowledged that. Multiple times today. There's a slight edge now. Not loud, but sharper. Whoopi lifts a hand. And I hear you. I just don't want viewers at home thinking if they're struggling, it's because they didn't grind hard enough. Dwayne's expression tightens for a second. And I don't want viewers at home thinking they're trapped with no agency. A louder reaction from the crowd. This is clearly resonating. One co-host jumps in. Maybe the real issue is balance. Balance is great, Dwayne says. But balance can't mean watering down the truth. Whoopi looks at him. Whose truth? He meets her gaze directly. Mine. And the millions of people who believe discipline changed their lives. And mine, she replies calmly, and the millions who know discipline didn't shield them from discrimination. The audience goes quiet again. Dwayne nods once. Then maybe we're both right. A small murmur ripples through the room. Whoopi studies him. Maybe. But here's where I'm pushing back. When you say this show focuses too much on what's broken, that's dismissive. He shakes his head immediately. That wasn't my intention. But that's how it came off, she says firmly. He pauses, then speaks slower. Okay. Then let me rephrase. I think conversations about what's broken are necessary. I just think they should be paired with conversations about personal power. The room softens slightly at that. Whoopi nods once. That's a better way to say it. A few claps. Dwayne continues, I'm not your enemy here. I'm not against reform. I'm not against calling out injustice. I just refuse to tell someone they're helpless. And I refuse, Whoopi says, to let people believe the system isn't real. They sit there for a moment, not arguing now, just holding their ground. One of the co-hosts finally smiles. You know what's interesting? You're both saying people deserve more. That gets a small laugh. Dwayne chuckles softly. That's true. Whoopi nods. It is. The tension isn't gone, but it's shifted. It feels less like a clash and more like two strong philosophies refusing to fully bend. Dwayne looks out at the audience. If there's someone watching right now who feels stuck, I'm not saying ignore reality. I'm saying don't let it define your ceiling. Applause. Whoopi follows, looking into the camera. And if you're watching and you feel like the system has been unfair, you're not crazy. It exists. And we're going to keep talking about it. More applause. There's still a divide in the room, but now it feels deliberate, almost respectful. Dwayne glances back at Whoopi. I appreciate you challenging me. She gives him a small nod. That's what we do here. A co-host laughs lightly. And sometimes we do it loudly. The audience laughs with her. But even with the lighter tone, you can tell this wasn't just another celebrity promo stop. Something real was said. And both of them know it. As the segment starts to wind down, the camera catches audience members still whispering to each other, some nodding in agreement with Dwayne, others clearly on Whoopi's side. The conversation didn't explode, but it didn't resolve either. And that unresolved tension hangs in the air as they prepare to close out the show. As the show moves into its final minutes, the tone shifts again, not tense, not playful, but reflective. You can feel that everyone at the table understands this wasn't just another celebrity appearance. One of the co-hosts looks toward the camera. We've had a lively conversation today. The audience laughs softly. Whoopi adjusts her cards in front of her. That's what live television is, she says. You don't script it. You talk it out. Dwayne nods. And I respect that. I didn't come here for an echo chamber. A few claps break out. Whoopi glances at him. Good. Because you weren't going to get one. The audience laughs louder this time. The tension has eased, but it hasn't disappeared. It's more like it's settled into something real. Dwayne turns slightly toward her. Let me say this before we wrap. I appreciate you pushing back. I do. I think disagreement is healthy. Whoopi gives a small nod. It is. As long as we remember we're not enemies. We're not, he says firmly. There's a brief pause, not awkward, but thoughtful. One of the co-hosts jumps in. I think what viewers just saw is two people who care deeply about different angles of the same issue. Exactly, Whoopi says. And that's important. Dwayne adds, we can believe in systemic change and still believe in personal responsibility. Those things don't cancel each other out. The audience claps, more unified this time. Whoopi looks out toward the crowd. And for the folks at home, it's okay if you agreed with him. It's okay if you agreed with me. The point is you're thinking about it. Applause. The director clearly signals they're almost out of time. Dwayne smiles slightly. Next time I come back, can we just talk about my movie? Whoopi smirks. Don't bet on it. Big laugh from the audience. They stand, shake hands. It's not overly dramatic. No forced hug, no exaggerated gestures. Just a firm handshake and eye contact that says, we meant what we said. As the credits roll, the audience keeps clapping, but you can see people still talking to each other, gesturing, debating in their seats. Some are nodding enthusiastically. Others are shaking their heads. And that's where the real aftermath begins. Within minutes of the show ending on the East Coast, clips start circulating online. A short video of Dwayne saying, barriers don't erase accountability, gets posted. Another clip of Whoopi saying, mindset doesn't pay rent, starts trending. On X, the reactions are immediate and divided. Some users praise Dwayne for standing his ground. Others applaud Whoopi for calling out oversimplified motivation culture. Instagram comment sections fill up fast. On TikTok, people stitch the clips, adding their own takes. Some say it was respectful disagreement. Others claim it exposed a deeper divide about privilege and power. By the afternoon, headlines start popping up mentioning Dwayne Johnson and Whoopi Goldberg in the same sentence, describing the moment as heated, intense, and unexpected. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, sources say there was no shouting backstage. No dramatic walk-offs. Dwayne reportedly thanked the hosts before leaving. Whoopi went to her dressing room like she always does after a long show. A production staffer is overheard saying, that's the kind of TV people actually watch. And they're right. Because it wasn't a scandal. It wasn't chaos. It was tension built from two lived experiences colliding in real time. Later that evening, Dwayne posts a short message on his social media. Nothing inflammatory. Just a line about respectful dialogue and strong conversations. The comments are flooded within minutes. Whoopi doesn't post immediately. But the next day, on the show, she briefly references the moment again. "We had a good talk yesterday," she says simply. "And we're still here." The audience applauds. That's the thing about live talk shows. The table is still there the next morning. The chairs are still there. The conversation continues. For Dwayne, the interview becomes one of the most talked about stops on his press tour. Not because of his movie, but because he didn't back down. For Whoopi, it reinforces what viewers already know about her. She's not afraid to challenge anyone at that table. And for viewers at home, it becomes a moment they replay, debate, and dissect. Some say Dwayne was right, that empowerment matters more than anything. Others say Whoopi was right, that ignoring systemic barriers does more harm than good. And many say the truth probably lives somewhere in the uncomfortable space between them. But here's what made it compelling. Nobody stormed off. Nobody insulted the other. The disagreement stayed sharp, but it stayed grounded. That's rare. And that's why people are still talking about it. So now we want to hear from you. Do you think Dwayne pushed back in the right way? Do you think Whoopi made the stronger argument? Or do you believe they were both defending truths that need to coexist? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Final Take Files for more real talk show stories.